Hello, people on Zoom. I'm just testing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Tasha. Can you hear Councilor Chambers now?
Oh, yes, I can hear the chamber now too.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Are we recording?
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. This is the July 11th, 2022 meeting of the Mansfield Town Council. I'm calling the meeting to order. Ms. Chain, would you please call the roll?
Osberger.
Here.
Berthelot. Here. Bruder.
Here.
Coleman.
Here.
Fertoni. Hotchenberger.
Stay here, please.
Moran.
Here.
Shuren.
Here.
Shaken.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the next opportunity is for the public to address the council. Do we have anybody from the public who has wished to address us or any communication? All right, seeing none, we will move directly to the report of the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, myself and the mayor and other local officials had an opportunity to sit down for an in-person visit with Mark Boughton, the Commissioner of Revenue, who also happens to be Governor Lamont's senior advisor on infrastructure. Commissioner Boughton's been accepting invitations from local officials to talk with them about transportation and infrastructure funding availability. As everybody knows, the bipartisan infrastructure law has made and will continue to make a significant amount of new federal funding available for local infrastructure projects. And so the town of Mansfield, like other municipalities, is doing everything it can to understand the funding that's available, prioritize the projects that we've been thinking about to figure out which ones are the best fit for the funding that is available or will become available shortly. And a lot of our conversations centered on the multi-use trail that we've talked about for some time and we've been pursuing for some time. The multi-use trail that would extend from Tower Hill Road at the edge of campus up to the Four Corners. And so Commissioner Boughton seemed very interested in that project as well as other things we discussed, and we appreciate his time and look forward to the follow-up with him and his staff and hopefully making some of these projects, in particular that project, come to fruition here in the near future. We're continuing to make progress. Staff is meeting with TSKP Studios, our architecture and design firm, on the Municipal Facilities Needs Assessment project. The plan is to hopefully have a report and a presentation for the council at the August Town Council meeting, so a couple meetings from now. I think I've had some conversations with the mayor and deputy mayor about where things stand in terms of the latest concepts and designs, in particular as it relates to some of the ideas being pursued for the redevelopment of this campus where the town hall is. And I think it'll be a really, hopefully the council will find it to be a very well researched and a lot of in-depth analysis, I think, has gone into this needs assessment up to this point. And that really, sort of marks phase one of what we're calling a two-phase needs assessment and schematic planning process. The town, we're starting to engage the state police right now on a successor multi-year service agreement for police services. Our existing contract with the state police for the resident trooper program actually expired end of last June, so we've been operating outside of we've had an expired contract. It hasn't really mattered a ton to date because the staffing levels hadn't changed. We continued to have the same staffing levels until this current fiscal year where, as the council will recall, you all authorized the addition of a quote-unquote community liaison trooper. This is a daytime position that will primarily focus on supports to our schools and youth services. And so as we bring that additional officer or trooper on board, we need to make sure that that's incorporated into the contract, the next multi-year contract as we move forward. Council obviously should be aware from my report, but you also might be aware through other communications that came out through Mansfield Public Schools late last week. We did have some unfortunate findings in terms of lead. Lead detected in water supply both at Goodwin School and Southeast School. As the council is well aware, Southeast School is currently in the process of being demolished, so there aren't concerns about what students may consume when they go back into that building. However, there are concerns and additional investigation that's needed because it appears that while it is below the action level, the source water that's coming into had been coming into Southeast School from wells that will be providing water to the new school. The lead levels detected were just below the action level. And so obviously when it's that close, you'd be concerned that if the sample had been taken, the day before, the day after, perhaps it would have been in excess of that action level. And so mitigation strategies are being explored. I think right now, even if the levels of lead that are being detected now persist, I think that our facilities folks and those involved in the construction of the new school believe that there are mitigation that can be put in place that'll keep everybody safe. But obviously it's something that needs to be addressed because the health of our children and faculty and staff and families for that matter is paramount. A couple more notes. The Helping Hand program, we are currently assisting 164 families with food and childcare. We've talked about this obviously with the council and giving you routine updates. The funding, which we fully expect to be fully expended by the end of December, may actually run out shortly before then. So in all our communications that staff within Human Services are having with families that are currently enrolled in the program and receiving support, we're making sure that they're aware that the end is nearing and helping them link up with other resources that they can access to help bridge the gap so that when the funding is fully expended and we don't have the resources to continue to administer support through the Helping Hand program, they do have another resource that they can turn to help them transition to something else. When it comes to the local business assistance program that the council recently authorized and that you're all aware, we recently opened a grant application window for. That window closed last Friday, July 8th. We received 22 applications, I believe just north of $180,000 worth of funding requests, and most of those were in the neighborhood of the maximal $10,000 amount. So and many thanks to Cynthia Van Zelm and her staff for all the support that the Downtown Partnership has provided to date and will continue to provide. We have formed a review committee. So Cynthia and her staff will review all the applications to make sure that they meet the basic eligibility criteria, that they're complete, nothing's missing. And then at that point, a review panel, if you will, or a working group of about 5 people will review those applications and ultimately provide recommendations to me as town manager. And council will recall that there's $370,000 that was authorized for that program. So only about half has been requested at this stage. So you all will obviously have some options to ponder in the future with what to do with that residual amount. Do a second round, re-advertise, or reprogram that for some other worthwhile endeavor. And I think in the interest of time, we'll stop there. Other than to say, last month was dog licensing month, and I think it's great to see that we had a slightly higher batting average in terms of the number of people that renewed their licenses using the online system. So I think one of our theories was by doing that we would have fewer folks that let it lapse and were delinquent. And it was kind of a proof of concept, right? So I will end my report there.
Questions for Mr. Aylesworth? Mr. Shuren?
Could you please just refresh my memory and others' memory, the criteria for funding for the small businesses? What basically are we looking for?
So it's a wide range of sort of eligible factors that would make a business eligible, but at the end of the day, we're looking for businesses that can show a documented impact from the pandemic. So whether they had to lay off staff, close for a stretch of time, other material economic impacts, and as far as the use of the funding, they can use it again for a wide range of purposes, including, you know, getting caught up on rent, meeting payroll obligations, et cetera. So
Keep them in business.
keep them in business, yeah. Yeah, it's for existing businesses. Yeah.
I would like to note that Mr. Fatoni has joined us virtually. Welcome, Al. Any other questions for the town manager? Mr. Coleman?
Good evening. Thank you for your report. Discussion a little bit about the lead in the new wells at the Southeast School. I reviewed the test results, and they're pretty concerning. The action level for lead, I think, is in parts per billion, and it's 0.015 part per billion is the action level, and we're at 0.145. That's very close. If you're talking parts per billion, I would imagine maybe even the next test might show levels at 0.15 or above. I had made...
Just a question. You said it's a test on the new well. I believe these are tests on the old wells?
This is the new wells, correct?
Yeah, so the old building, Southeast School, for some period of time has been drawing its water from the new wells, the wells that will serve the new school.
And I had made some inquiries about the site at the Southeast School, and part of that inquiry that I also shared with the CEQ and the DEEP, I mentioned that some old-timers said that that site may have been used for stump disposal as well as road sweepings. I think the town should look in and to see if that site actually was used in that regard, because road sweepings would be a source of lead, seeing that leaded gasoline was used very prevalently during that time frame. Do you have any plans to do any further studies on that site to find out where that lead is coming from? DPH website says that lead is not a naturally occurring substance in drinking water. So something's going on. How are we going to go about figuring out where that lead's coming from?
I think the short answer is that the team, and it's a lot of different entities involved in this project right now, including town staff, when it comes to figuring out the source of the lead, they're coming up with a game plan for that, as well as actively determining what the mitigation strategies would be to address, you know, basically the problem, the symptom of the problem. You're obviously getting at the source of the problem, and it's kind of a multi-factor thing. It's relatively fresh information in the sense that, you know, it came in last week, and so it's a priority. We have the benefit of some time before, obviously, the next school year starts, but I anticipate that we'll have, you know, a plan in place that should, you know, inspire everybody's confidence.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Aylesworth? Thank you, Mr. Aylesworth. Then we will proceed to reports and comments of council members. I will add my comment to the town managers that the meeting with Commissioner Broughton was cordial, enthusiastic even, and left us with promises for direct assistance in getting connected to the right people to get the money to build the sidewalk on Route 195. So we are all feeling hopeful. He seemed to believe it would meet all the required criteria. So it was a very encouraging meeting. We've also had a couple of conversations with UConn and the Secretary of State's office about the possibility of locating a polling place on campus. It doesn't look as if that will be possible for this coming election or this year, but there are still some possibilities to follow up on in the future. Anybody else have a report or comment? Nope. Nobody on screen? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have two items. One of them is the minutes, and the other is the reappointment of Mr. Coleman to the Downtown Partnership Board of Directors. would somebody move the consent agenda? Mr. Shuren moves, is second from Mr. Coleman. Any discussion or concern about the consent agenda? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous, thank you. Next item is, there is no old business, so now we have new business, which is an update on CROG initiatives and activities. Matt, would you come forward? I think Matt Hart is a familiar person to everybody on the council. Welcome back. Welcome to that side of the table. This is a bit of a change for you, so it's nice to have you here.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Matt Hart, Executive Director for the Capital Region Council of Governments. And it is wonderful to be back here in this room where I spent so many years and so much quality time with several of you. And very proud of the job that Mr. Aylesworth is doing for our community. So in my new capacity as the Executive Director for CROG, and I've been in the job for about 4.5 months, I'm trying to get out and visit our 38 member municipalities. So the Capital Region, or CROG, is one of 9 councils of governments in the state, just 9. And as you may know, Connecticut does not have any formal form of county government. I think we abolished county government in 1959 or 1960. We still have the geographic place names, Collin County, Windham County, Hartford County, et cetera. But county government does not exist in our state and hasn't for several decades. Councils of governments do perform some functions that are similar to counties, but also very different. And I'll elaborate in a moment or two. So as I said, the Capital Region, we represent 38 towns in the greater Hartford region. And it's a population of a little under 1 million people and a geographic area of approximately 1,000 square miles. And we are the largest council of governments, or COG, in our state. We have a staff of 29 people, and then we employ some independent contractors as well. So what do we do? What do we do on behalf of our member towns and our residents? I'll talk about the 3 primary hats we wear, and then I did distribute what we call a benefits statement. You should find it at all of your places, and I'll review that a little bit as well. But what are the 3 hats we wear? The first one is that of a council of governments. Council of governments were created under state statute. And when you think of our council government's role, I would encourage you to think of our municipal services portfolio and the functions we perform there. We've got a long-standing purchasing coalition where we vet both commodities and services, and we maintain an active list of contractors that our member towns can utilize. We do the due diligence on your behalf in terms of selecting a vendor, whether it's for salt, grass seed, et cetera, or for professional services. So that we've got our COG, our municipal services hat. Our second major function that we perform is that of a regional planning agency. So CROG has a regional planning commission comprised of representatives from each of our 38 towns, and Mansfield has been very diligent about having a representative from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Typically, the members of the RPC also serve on their local land use board, and their responsibility is to administer our regional plan of conservation and development. And they will review applications coming from the member towns to determine to what extent they're consistent with that regional plan. And I believe it's pursuant to state statute. If a local land use board receives an application for a project within 500 feet of a municipal boundary, it must be referred to the RPC for a determination as to what extent, whether or not the project is consistent with our regional plan of conservation and development. So that's the regional planning agency hat. And then the third hat that we wear, also very significant, is that of a metropolitan planning organization, an MPO. That is a federal designation. And in our role as an MPO, we administer federal transportation dollars, as well as some state transportation dollars. Not all of the 9 COGs are MPOs, 7 of the 9 are, and 2 of them have a rural characterization. That would be the Northwest Hills and the Northeastern Council governments. So those are the 3 primary hats we wear. If I could draw your attention to the benefit statement that I distributed, and I will provide Ms. Chain and Mr. Aylesworth with an electronic copy so that they can attach it to the minutes or distribute it to other members of the council. This is a benefit statement we prepare on an annual basis for each of the 38 towns, and it normally has a 5-year look-back period. So this statement is for the years 2018 through 2022, and you'll see in the upper right-hand corner the dues that Mansfield will be paying for next fiscal year, and they were unchanged from the current year at $20,875. Our calculation is that the 5-year benefits that the town received from its membership with CROG total approximately $1.2 million over that time frame. And you can see the major categories on this page in terms of how the benefits break down. Transportation programs, this is our allocation to Mansfield, the value of that service that we provide to the region. Our administration of our various regional plans, that regional plan of conservation development, our regional economic development strategy, et cetera. Under capital planning and projects, that is probably the most significant benefit monetarily, and you can see at approximately $927,000 over the 5 years. And some specific projects to that, where you come to that amount, you'll see to the right-hand side of the page, the Eastwood Road Sidewalk Project, which was one of our LOTSIP, local capital improvement transportation projects, as well as a Eastern Gateway study that we performed over a period of years, and then a percentage of the regional roundabout study. We also administer, under our municipal services portfolio, some assistance to people who are dealing with crumbling foundations, and we know that's an important issue in the eastern part of our region. CROG's role is to help select the vendors that conduct the inspections, on the foundation. So you'll see an assigned cost for that, a share of our regional services grant, or RSG, which supports our programs more generally, and then an amount for the Regional Purchasing Council, which again, that is CROG will engage in a competitive selection process to identify a number of contractors and service providers that can provide both commodities and services to our member towns. We do the due diligence on your behalf, and you can select a vendor off of our list. And I know Mansfield has utilized the service before in the past. Turning the page over, if we could, here are some highlights from the previous fiscal year, the year that ended on June 30th. And these are some excerpts from a presentation I made at our recent annual meeting, and want to thank the mayor and Mr. Aylesworth for attending. We talk about the fact how we work to save our members time and money. Our purchasing council, over this one fiscal year alone, across all 38 towns, saving our members approximately $1.9 million. We have this Easy IQC program. What is that all about? That is a competitive contractor selection program where we vet and select contractors that our member towns can utilize for smaller construction projects. I'm not going to review each and every one of these, but we also competitively bid for diversity, equity, and inclusion training services So we have a contractor lined up that our member towns can utilize for that purpose if they choose to do so. The company that we selected is Daniel Penn Associates. Krog staff is actually going through their program right now. We have a Brownfields revolving loan program as well, and we just awarded our first loan this past fiscal year. We have a department that supports public safety, homeland security, and public health. We've been very, very involved over the course of the pandemic. I'd like to thank Mansfield and all of our member towns for the active role that they've played at a regional level. We administer a little over approximately $1.2 million a year here as well on behalf of 14 local public health and regional health districts. Looking at the right-hand side of the page, in our role as the MPO, we directed over $44 million in transportation funds over this past year, $27 million in federal funding, and $17 million in state dollars. We also made commitments to fund another $26 million in projects. And we're always conducting various planning studies, which the importance of a planning study is they generally become the basis of a project. And here's a sample of some things we completed over the past year: a Route 5 corridor study in East Windsor. We did a very important benefit study of the East Coast Rail project, which would extend service from New Haven up to Boston, and actually a greater connection to New York City. But the area we're focused on is from Hartford north to Springfield, and then working with our colleagues in Massachusetts to improve service from Springfield east to Worcester and then on to Boston. And then we initiated some additional planning studies for the coming year. Lastly, I want to touch on some other major projects that we have underway that I think are relevant and a good sampling of our work. The town manager earlier talked about federal infrastructure investment, job acts, or the bipartisan infrastructure law funding coming to our state, a little over $6 billion altogether. Councils of governments are going to play a major role in terms of administering some of the discretionary funding. So we are going to be taking in applications from our member towns. We're also going to be preparing regional applications that we will submit to the state on behalf of the region. And we are hiring 2 dedicated staff people to assist with that task over the next 5 years. And they will be a resource that's available to answer any questions and to help educate our member towns regarding the various funding opportunities. But equally as important, they'll be working to put together very competitive applications on behalf of the region. Another project we're working on is we just initiated a waste management project, and we have retained a consultant with vast experience in the field out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. We've formed a steering committee for the project and wanted to thank Mr. Aylesworth for nominating Ginny Walton to serve on that steering committee. I think she'll do a fabulous job for us. As you may know, in the capital region and in Connecticut, waste management is it's a big issue for us. It's a big issue for us, especially with the closure of MIRA in Hartford. Fortunately, Mansfield does not rely on that facility, but many of our member towns do. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that we're working on the preparation of 4 applications to the state's Regional Performance Incentive Program, or RPIP for short. Those of you who have been on the council for a while, you may recall this in years past. That was an initiative that was established under the Malloy administration, and the RPIP program provides seed funding for a 3-year period to support various regional activities. And the Lamont administration has just brought it back and announced a new round of funding. So we are preparing 4 applications, one concerning economic development, one concerning animal control, one for building inspection and one for assessments, where we are looking to create regional offices in all 4 of those disciplines to help supplement the work that's being done at a local level. So if we're successful with these applications and the state approves them, and we'll know sometime this fall, if we're able to establish, for example, a regional office of animal control, if one of our member towns is facing a staffing shortage or is facing an increased burden or need for that service, we will be able to supplement the service that you're providing at a local level. So I'll pause there, Mayor. I know that's a lot over just a few minutes, and happy to take any questions you might have, and really want to thank you for your involvement as the chair of our Personnel and Finance Committee, as well as Mr. Aylesworth's involvement on our policy board.
Well, you may remember that we had a decision to make when the state reorganized the CROGs, and one of the decisions and one of our considerations was, should we look westward or eastward or northward for our Council of Governments? I will say that I'm very glad that we are part of CROG. The depth of its resources and experience has made me feel that we made a right decision. That I'm always amazed when I go to these meetings by how much work is being done and how much expertise there is, as well as how much money there is for projects and programs. So, Mr. Osberger.
Hi, Matt. Great report, and this is wonderful to see all this. And yes, I am also glad that we're a part of this. When I was on zoning, I recall receiving a book that discussed from a federal level corridor, the 84 corridor, and getting either rail or some sort of mass transit from Hartford to Stores. Have you heard any dialogue since then? I haven't heard anything in the last 4 or 5 years on this, and I know that it was an initiative that they were pushing that was going to come up the 91 corridor and then straight over, somehow tying into the rail line going up and down between Worcester, Providence.
Go ahead.
Yep, happy to respond to that, Councilor Osberger. So a couple of initiatives I would mention. There was some conversation, and at a very conceptual level, about high-speed rail coming from Fairfield County and extending east, including through Talon County. But that project, to the best of my knowledge, has not advanced to any significant degree. We are working in collaboration. Actually, the DOT is taking the lead. Amtrak actually owns the line, the Hartford Rail Line. But a few years ago, under the Malloy administration, the state decided to make a substantial investment to restore service on the Hartford line. And the Lamont administration is continuing that. And the DOT's focus right now is to build out the double tracking so that we can expand the number of trips per day that are going from Hartford to Springfield. So, you know, the talk about a connection east through Talon County and Mansfield, again, you know, I think that was only at a very conceptual level. I do know that the state some years ago did extend Fast Track, the CT Fast Track bus to the university, and I know there's an interest in looking at expanding that service further along 384, further east along 384, to eventually link to the town of Windham.
Well, I understand that the rails own the right-of-ways along that 384 corridor as well, and so somehow I think that was part of the discussion that they were going to. Of course, now it's the East Coast Greenway, but certainly they still own the rights of way, and just curious if that discussion was ever reached or broached.
All I'm aware of is a high-level conversation that we had at the COG level roughly a year ago. I think it was shortly after Mr. Aylesworth started, as I recall. But the recent focus has been enhancing the Hartford line. The state is also continuing to make investments in the New Haven line, and more recently, the line that extends from, I believe it's Bridgeport, up to Waterbury.
Thank you.
Sure.
I would just add, I know that when when President Katsilas was still the president of UConn, I know he was very interested in the project that Mr. Osberger is speaking about for obvious reasons in terms of the transformational, impact it would have on UConn if you had high-speed rail with a stop in Stores and the ability to get over to Hartford in, 10, 11 minutes, and New York or Boston in like an hour. But yeah, like Matt's saying, I don't think it's progressed past a conceptual stage.
I think they were talking about tunneling under Stores, and that sounded both amazingly expensive, impractical, and unlikely to transpire. Mr. Katzenberger, followed by Mr. Coleman, followed by Ms. Berthelot.
Thank you, and it's very nice to see you back here. So thanks for coming, Matt. Just two questions unrelated to each other. One is, Krog, you guys don't manage the captive insurer and Crumble Foundations, or do you? But I wasn't sure of the relationship between what you do and the captive insurer.
We have a good working relationship with them. Actually, I am a new member on their board, succeeding Lyle Ray, but the captive is technically separate. And the role we play is with contractor selection, and we also reimburse homeowners for the testing fee.
Okay.
So that's our role in the process.
And then, thank you. And then on the Homeland Security Grant programs, generally, what have the funds been used for, or what have they been, provided for, and what have we used them for?
Historically, training as well as equipment.
Like equipment such as?
Public safety and emergency management oriented. So it can range from a heavy-duty police vehicle, like a SWAT vehicle, to a trailer that is used to hold PPE and emergency and shelter materials that can be deployed region-wide based on a need, if there's a storm event, et cetera. And this equipment, we do not have room to house it at our facility, so it's actually distributed among the 38 towns. And the 38 towns will host various pieces of the capital region equipment.
So the the material for disaster aid, whatever, that's part of then administered by FEMA typically if it comes in?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Coleman, followed by Ms. Berthelot.
Welcome back, Matt. I got a few questions. Did I hear you say that the 384 extension from Bolton to Wyndham is still alive? Is that still under discussion?
To the best of my knowledge, it's still under discussion. I don't
Okay.
think that any decisions have been made.
That's
no.
right. Because I thought that was put on ice a long time ago, but it's actually being discussed today.
I'll confirm the most recent discussions because
Okay.
I want to make sure I'm accurate on that point.
Okay. Here you say you directed over $44 million of transportation spending from the federal government and the state government. What is the money trail on that? Do you just help the member towns with applications, or do you procure the money, or exactly what do you mean when you're saying you directed over $44 million?
So the process is pretty tightly prescripted by both federal highway, if it's federal money, through the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, as well as under the state grant, the state lot zip grant. So both the federal government and the state government have a host of procurement rules that we and our member towns need to utilize when a project is approved. And those projects are all audited, and eventually they're subject to audit at both the state level and a federal level.
Okay, thank you. You said the CROG actually helps procuring services and commodities. Seeing the price of heating oil and the expense, I know Mansfield has their own energy consultant. Does CROG have any sort of oil cooperative deployed at the moment, or would you think of something like that where the member towns could share buying oil in bulk?
Yeah, heating oil is one of the commodities that a member town can purchase through our purchasing coalition. I can't give you the most recent price off the top of my head.
Okay, how's it compare to
Well, we do a competitive process, so we're looking for the best value for our 38 towns. And because we're bringing 38 towns, that enables us, or potentially 38 towns, that enables us to obtain a competitive price in most circumstances. But in some cases, a member town, working through their own consultant can do equally as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Berthelot?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Good to see you. My question is about the planning studies, transportation planning studies. I guess my question is, when the funding comes in, does that dictate what the planning will be, or do you have control over what studies you initiate?
Well, once a project is approved for funding at the federal level, either the Connecticut DOT or Federal Highway Administration needs to ultimately endorse the scope of services.
I'm thinking of the planning, so the conducting planning studies.
Yes.
So the Route 5 corridor study, was that something that the federal government or the state wanted a study done, or was that something you all initiated and used your own funds?
In most cases, the ideas come from either the COG or the member town, and then we apply for federal or state funding. And when we submit, if the application is approved, the appropriate agency will sign off on the scope of services. But the ideas primarily come from us or our members.
Is there any conversation about future studies around aging and transportation in the region?
Yes, and actually we've got one of the projects we listed right here, this transit priority corridor study, that looked specifically at the city of Hartford as well as the town of East Hartford, a variety of transit needs, including that particular issue, in terms of how to best support that age demographic. So we will periodically look at that issue either discreetly at just a handful of towns or region-wide.
And would that be something that's at some point then Mansfield, our community, could also?
I'd certainly welcome that suggestion.
Excellent.
I can take that now.
All right, thank you.
And I should point out, I meant to do this before I wrapped up. I wanted to also thank John Carrington, your Director of Public Works, for his longtime service on our Transportation Committee. That's where these discussions are primarily held. And John's been a very active participant during his tenure here.
Yeah.
That is one area where the differences between the more rural communities and the urban communities really surfaces in CROG discussions. We are not the only rural style community in CROG, but every once in a while we have to remind the other members that our problems are slightly different. Mr. Shuren?
Yeah, just curious, and something I should know. How are you governed? Is it based on, you have a board consisting of all the member towns, or is it based on population in terms of decision-making? Or how does that all work?
Great question, Counselor. So we have a policy board comprised of 40 members. So 37 of the towns, the chief elected official from that community is automatically a member of our policy board. They can choose to designate an alternate for times when they're not available. And in council manager communities, generally the alternate is a town manager. The city of Hartford, under our bylaws, has 3 representatives on the policy board, the mayor plus 2 others. And that's pursuant to our bylaws. So the policy board, that's roughly analogous to the town council in some ways. That's the board with the most decision-making authority. The policy board does have an executive committee comprised of 19 members who really can make decisions when the full policy board is not available. As you can imagine, sometimes it can be difficult to get a quorum of the policy board together. We also have a municipal services committee That's one of our standing committees, Transportation Committee, the Regional Planning Commission, and then others such as the Personnel and Finance Committee. But the Policy Board is the primary board.
So the smaller rural communities are well represented in this board.
Yes, yes, and we're a very diverse region when, looking at it from that perspective, in that we have some rural towns, rural by Connecticut standards. Most of our towns are what you would characterize as suburban, and then we have a handful of urban areas as well, or cities.
Any further questions? Do you have any questions for us?
Well, if you ever have any thoughts in terms of our services or areas where you think we could improve or additional areas you'd like us to study, I will certainly take Councilor Bertolot's suggestion. I'll bring that to Mr. Carrington's attention as well and get back to you regarding Councilor Coleman's question regarding the potential extension of Fast Track further east. But again, any thoughts or suggestions you might have for us. Also, we're a member-driven organization. What other service might you think we should consider providing to our members? We'll vet that idea.
Mr. Coleman?
Just to follow up on my question about 384 extension. The state had purchased and condemned all that property back in the 70s. Do they still own that property to be able to do the extension? And would that put the highway in a close enough proximity to have a direct ramp to Yukon? Those questions you can answer later. I don't expect an answer tonight, but if you could find out and follow up with me, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll confirm that. I don't believe that there are discussions regarding the extension of Route 6 to the extent we had them in years past. But I'll make sure to get the appropriate detail and pass it on to you through the town manager.
Any further questions? No? Well, thanks very much for coming all the way out here. And very glad to see you and hear from you again. And we wish you the best in your new role.
Thank you, Mayor. It's wonderful to be here.
Yep.
Wish you a productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is our planning, a council goal-setting session. Mr. Aylesworth.
I think you might have skipped over an agenda item.
What did I skip over? Oh, implementation plan for marketing and, sorry. Yes, this is a big one. Mr. Aylesworth.
So the council will recall at the March 14th meeting, that was the evening that the council took action on a number of the previously proposed funding recommendations, American Rescue Plan funding recommendations that staff had presented to you all. And during the course of that meeting, the council elected to basically designate each of the items that were recommended, or each of the projects or initiatives that were recommended into one of three different categories, if you will, those that were fully greenlit, those that were conditionally approved, and those that were set aside for future discussion. One of the items that was conditionally approved at that meeting was the item that's before you all now, and that is funding support in the amount of $30,000 to essentially help with implementation of both the new strategic plan for downtown stores as well as components of the economic vitality implementation plan. This is the four-town economic vitality plan that the town of Mansfield has been working on with Coventry and Tolland and Bolton. The agenda item summary goes into some detail about basically the work that both the four-town group as well as the Mansfield Downtown Partnership and the Consultant Street Sense pursued in the development of the strategic plan for downtown stores. So I won't necessarily rehash all that here, but this is $30,000 to advance various components that have been recommended in those respective plans. Cynthia Van Zelm is here to help answer any questions that the council has as well. But we'll kind of leave it there. Like I said, the packet walks you through some of how that funding would be utilized.
Ms. Van Zelm, do you wish to add to Mr. Aylesworth's representation?
No, I think Ryan did a great job. The only thing I would add as a point of information, it's just, I think for those of us all of us that like to see things carried through, we're working off of two pretty heavy plans and we're making a lot of progress with implementation. So I think that's always great to be able to report back to the council. And the additional funding will allow us to keep the momentum going on both those plans.
I might have also just mentioned for clarity that there has been money that the council has authorized and approved as part of the capital improvement program that is going towards, marketing and what you might call economic development more broadly in the downtown area. So I just want to point out, and this was specified in the agenda item summary, but this is intended to supplement or complement that. It's not directly overlapping in any way.
Questions for Mr. Aylesworth or Ms. Van Zelm on this proposal? Mr. Coleman?
Who's going to be the steward of the money when it's distributed? The downtown partnership?
Yeah, I think that the partnership as our, as you know, we contract with the Downtown Partnership for Economic Development Services. And so, I mean, I want to be careful how I answer it in the sense that, Cynthia is not one, it's not really in her DNA to, make decisions unilaterally without consulting with me and building consensus. So I'm sure there would be open dialogue the whole time. But in terms of, if your question is who would be kind of running the point on this, it would be Cynthia and her staff of the Downtown Partnership.
Okay, so if the MDP is the fiduciary point in the process, I will need to recuse myself.
I remember that we have shared financial services between the town and the partnership, so the money actually resides under town control because of the way the finances are set up. It would be fully audited and reported on in accordance with all of our rules and regulations. So it's not like we're handing $30,000 to.
That's correct.
To people who aren't fully supervised. And I don't think the board of the partnership has any say over this either. I think because it's an economic development of the town, it is the council and our staff who control the decision-making on this money.
I think you clarified that for me, so I will not recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shuren.
Yeah, I just want to say I was very pleased to have discussions with Ms. Van Zelm about, in terms of the strategic action plan, involving in discussion people who are directly affected by that, and I know that that'll continue, so I appreciate that.
Mr. Shuren, the sun is right behind your head, so I may not see you if you raise your hand, so you may have to call my attention to your interest in speaking. Any other question on this item? All right, there's a motion on page 15. Mr. Osberger?
I move to authorize the town manager to move forward with implementing marketing initiatives in the four-town economic vitality plan and the downtown store strategic action plan using $30,000 in ARPA funds.
Is there a second? Ms. Berthelot seconds. Mr. Bruder, I didn't see you in time. Mr. Osberger, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, that I think this is a good use of money.
Thank you. One of the comments I would make is that the downtown is a part of the regional strategy to attract businesses to the area. So the fact that we make the downtown more attractive makes a great deal of sense. It benefits the Mansfield, but it also benefits our four-town vitality plan. Any other comments on this motion? Mr. Coleman.
This is a question for Ryan. What are the other three towns pitching in monetarily wise? I mean, how are we working this out together that we can, use the funding together to meet our goals?
So a portion of the funding, about $5,000 if I recall, $5,000 of our, what would be a $30,000 commitment that we're spelling out here, would go towards an MPA, Master Public Administration intern, that would support the effort of the 4-town Economic Vitality Working Group. And so each of the 4 towns are contributing $5,000 because it's about a $20,000 price tag. So in that sense, that particular, not an initiative per se, but that resource, that shared resource, will be sort of equally funded amongst the 4. But I think in terms of how the $30,000, again, I want to emphasize that the $30,000 would be funding towards a couple different things. And I actually think, while it's a little fluid and we're obviously working through, we'll continue to work through the details of how those funds will be utilized, when it comes to the funds that are used on the 4-town initiative versus the downtown strategic plan implementation, as I sit here now, I actually anticipate that the bulk of that $30,000 will be used on the former. It'll be used on the downtown strategic plan implementation, which obviously directly benefits Mansfield. So while we're certainly going to discuss a variety of different options, it's possible, and I encourage Cynthia to chime in here with any thoughts that she has, but I don't know that it's necessarily a given that more than that $5,000 will go towards the 4-town initiative at this time. Perhaps some nominal amounts of additional funding. But Cynthia, do you want to speak to that and share your thoughts?
Yeah, Ryan, that's accurate. There may be some funding that would go toward website development for the 4-town initiative. So just as a little bit of background, which I think is in the AIS, but the team has hired DKA to do the logo and branding initiative, and we actually the town did not have to put any money toward that because of a couple of reasons, including that I actually put together the RFP. So that was Mansfield's contribution instead of a cash contribution. So there may be some dollars that, as Ryan said, will be equally spent because we're doing that whenever we can, or if there's an in-kind service such as I have provided. So if there's some website development, social media development that comes out of the logo, branding, marketing plan initiative that DK is doing, there may be some financial resources out of the $25,000 that is left that would go toward that. But I think it would be more minimal in terms of the contribution to the 4-town piece.
I would also comment that every town is contributing staff to developing and managing this, so there is an equal in-kind contribution in any case. Any further questions regarding this motion? All right, ready to vote? All those in favor of Mr. Osberger's motion, please raise your hand. I believe we are unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now, goal setting. Mr. Aylesworth.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor herself brought up, I think it was at the last meeting, it has been some time since the town council engaged in a goal-setting process. I don't know that, based on the history I've been provided, this always happened on an annual basis, but maybe a majority of the years or thereabouts, there was a goal-setting process that the council went through to make sure that, basically the day-to-day, week-to-week operation stuff that the town was pursuing lined up with, our larger aspirational goals, and that the sort of annual goals that the council might set for itself, I think, were also in alignment with some of our long-term plans as are articulated in the Plan of Conservation and Development, which our most recent installment of that is, of course, the Mansfield Tomorrow Plan. So with that in mind, I'm somewhat proposing that we do this in a couple parts. I don't want to bite off too much tonight. I think depending on when exactly we get this scheduled for, and that's one of the things I want to talk about tonight, there would be an opportunity for me to talk with the council at the next meeting and kind of go through the next phase of this. But I thought we might have a chance while everybody's here to talk about possible dates and times and potentially locations. So I was envisioning basically a multi-hour, retreat's kind of a strong word. In my mind, this is something, it's kind of a light retreat because we're not going away for a couple days, but think of it at most as sort of a half day sort of affair. But the question, I guess, then would be, as far as timing, looking at the calendar, I would propose early August. I would propose early August for a couple different reasons. One, it occurs to me as I was thinking about the timing that with my own goals being established as part of the evaluation process, it would be advantageous, helpful for the council's goal setting to have already taken place, so that the goals that are set for me naturally align with the goals that the council's setting. Not that they would likely go off in totally different directions, but I just think one thing kind of builds on the next. And so August would be the right time frame then for the council goals to be established. Specifically, I was looking at Tuesday, August 9th, Wednesday, August 10th, and potentially Saturday, August 20th. So hopefully finding a time frame on one of those days at the council that worked for all the parties involved. Want to get your feedback on time of day. I would perhaps propose starting in the morning and getting people while they're fresh and the coffee's running through everybody's veins and kind of getting people again while they're fresh. But
let me ask a question. How many people would not be available on one of those mornings for, say, 3 hours, from, say, 9 to 12? I know that some of us are employed and some of us will be away. So the first question is, I would really like every person to be present for this. So is there anybody who could not arrange to be available for that period of time? Ms. Berthelot? You will not?
Those days.
Okay. Mr. Frattoni?
Yeah, I could be available that Saturday, but not during the week. And isn't August 8th, is one of the days August 8th or 9th or something?
August 9th.
Because isn't that like a primary day too?
That is primary day. So
It is a primary day. Mr. Shaken?
Ryan, can you repeat the dates? They went past me.
I said August 9th, which for the reasons Mr. Frattoni just brought up might be going by the wayside, but Tuesday, August 9th, Wednesday, August 10th, or Saturday, August 20th. And looking at basically 3-hour windows, 9 to noon, or alternatively 5 to 8.
Thanks. Actually, that period of time in August does not work for me either, for that block of time. I could do after the 20th with ease, and I could do during the day and could do a Saturday if necessary.
Well, let's start with the first question. Who could not make a weekday at any time? Mr. Frattoni can't make a weekday at any time. All right, so Mr. Bruder, are you in that same boat?
It would just be tricky, that's all. It just would depend on the other operational needs in the office.
Okay, so I think our best bet then is to look at a Saturday. So are there Saturdays available somewhere between the 1st of August and the 15th? Or is there anybody who's going to be unavailable that whole period? Mr. Shaken is unavailable, Ms. Berthelot. How about from the 15th to the 30th, or whatever day is the end of the month? No, Ms. Berthelot will be away. Okay, this now looks like we're moving into September. I will be out of town over Labor Day weekend, so that takes care of that one.
10th.
The 10th is a council meeting.
10th is a Saturday.
The 10th is a Saturday. How about the 10th? Ms. Berthelot's good? So Saturday morning, September 10th? Mr. Aylesworth, does that work for you?
Yeah, the only caveat is, for me, to be honest, childcare. My wife works certain Saturdays, and as we sit here on the fly, I don't know. I inquired about Saturdays in August with my spouse today. I did not inquire with her about September. So
Okay.
perhaps with enough advanced planning, we could make that work regardless, even if it's not when she's scheduled for, but
Well, you're obviously a critical participant, so.
thank you.
Let's set a tentative date of September 10th. And
I would not be available on the 17th, for sure.
10th.
Mayor,
oh, Sam?
thank you. I'm looking at my calendar for September 10th and I'm not going to be in the state. I mean, would it be easier if we tried doing like some kind of doodle poll or something to that effect where, you know, we pick, I don't know, 15 different times that works for Ryan and then we all try to say yes or no, depending on, you know, our availability.
Right. Well, what I think we have determined is that it has to be a Saturday, which was an important question for me.
Or an evening, I guess. We
Or
kind
an-
of glossed over. I mean, I think for this sort of, all else being equal, obviously work schedules and other logistics, you know, factor in. I was thinking that the evening for the sort of intellectual work that this entails might be a little tougher, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means,
All right, let's take a poll. Oh, an evening somewhere along the way without a date, or a Saturday morning? How many would prefer an evening? Nobody.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I like
Okay.
Sam's idea rather than to try to just propose a bunch of dates
Okay.
and doodle poll it.
All right, so we'll look at
times.
evenings or Saturday mornings.
okay. The only other information or thoughts I wanted to get into tonight was just, you know, I'm thinking it's important or valuable to get out of this space, do a change of scenery, get the council together someplace else. That doesn't mean it has to be far away or a elaborate destination sort of gathering, but you know, talking with UConn about conference facilities that they have, talking about the Graduate Hotel.
Shorefront property in Old Saybrook.
And you know, we have space, you know, there's space in the Community Center of the Arts, there's Nash Zimmer, there's the library. So basically just something that's not this room. So unless anybody has a really strong feeling that they really want to be in council chambers, I'm going to be doing something other than council chambers. Okay.
And it is, of course, a special meeting of the council and will be.
Duly noticed and open to the public.
Right.
So are we going with the 10th?
No, we're going to do a doodle poll.
I'll get a doodle poll out tomorrow.
Yeah. Mr. Shaken, you had your hand up?
I was just gonna make sure that whatever we do is compliant with the new
Yes.
public meeting
Yeah,
law.
we've
streaming
already
required,
discussed
et cetera.
that.
Great to
Okay,
know.
any other questions or anything else you want to?
Nope, so just to be clear, we ruled out morning weekdays, right?
Yes.
So it's evenings, 5 to 8, or Saturdays.
Right, and August does not look
And
like
August
it's going to
is-
work
yeah.
either.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
All right. You have all heard that Mr. Kotchenberger has accepted a temporary position at a university way outside of Connecticut. And he has decided that rather than participate virtually during this time, he will give his all to his new position. Now, Mr. Kotchenberger has served town government for more than 20 years, I believe. Yeah, 23 or something. So we really would like to have a celebration of his leaving. And I have suggested a half-hour reception before our next council meeting. You know, cake and cookies and refreshments, whatever, and to invite whoever would like to participate. Other planning and zoning folks would be interested in joining us and wishing him well. So I just wanted to let you know that was in the planning stages, and you will be with us through August, right?
Through July,
Through July. Okay,
Right.
so it has to be at our next meeting.
yes.
Okay.
Well, I could, yes. I mean, I
Yes.
will be here through, I'll be in town until like August 1st.
Okay, well, it has to be our next meeting. Okay, if we're going to do this for the half hour before the next meeting. So, Mr. Aylesworth, could you make sure that it gets taken care of and is on our agenda?
I'll work with staff to make sure we get insurance-themed Jeopardy up and running for,
That would be very nice. I appreciate that. That would be good. I am teaching insurance law at this law school as well as other courses.
All right, council committees, finance?
Well, I hate to say it because it's sort of anticlimactic since the last time I'll chair the Finance Committee, but we did not have a meeting. Did not have any particular items on the agenda. I'll simply use this time to say it's been a privilege to work on that committee and then to chair it the last couple of times. I'd like to particularly thank Charmaine and Sherry Trahan beforehand, as well as Ryan, and then Ben Shaken and Al Fratoni, who have served with this. Thank you.
Well, you can do your formal thanks next council meeting. All right. Personnel.
Yeah, we have not met. We did, at our previous meeting, as I mentioned, we had kind of finalized the questionnaire. I would like to say that we had a schedule for the evaluation of the town manager, and the date of September 12th for the town council completing, I'd like to tweak that based on our discussion of having the meeting about goals. We have plenty of time to have it all done by the end of October, so I'd like to just kind of rearrange that date. See, the idea was we would have the council complete their survey by September 12th.
So you're just want to delay the completion
A bit,
date?
yes.
Okay. So is this a recommendation from the committee or?
Not yet, no.
Not yet,
We'll
okay.
meet. This just came up.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay, committee on committees.
We meet on Thursday. See you there.
Okay, anything else for anybody to report? Okay, anything on departmental and advisory committee reports? Seeing none. Petitions, requests, and communications, there's only the Troop C monthly report. Anything for future agendas? Oh my goodness, a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. Osberger. Is there a second? Mr. Coleman seconds. Mr. Bruder seconds the second. All those in favor of adjourning, raise your hand. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy the next couple of weeks. See you in 2 weeks.
Recording stopped.